Kalen Ross stood in the huge hangar of Station Meridian, breathing in the smell of burnt metal and recycled air. He was looking at what everyone else said was his biggest mistake. "You really bought that?" Marcus Chin, the only other business partner he had left, shook his head in disbelief. "Kalen, we can barely pay the bills and you spent our last 50,000 credits on that?" Kalen ran his hand through his dark hair, which was already showing signs of gray at the age of 32. His blue coveralls were dirty with grease, and his hands were scarred from working in salvage for 15 years. He looked up at the huge starship in front of him. It was almost 200 meters long, and its hull was covered in strange metallic patterns that looked like veins running under skin. "Marcus, everyone sees junk. I see possibilities." "Possible?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "That's the old Earth Expansion's Covenant-class Explorer. It's been 70 years since those ships were useful. The auctioneer said it has been floating in space for decades without life. No power core, no systems that work, nothing." Kalen moved closer to the ship and put his hand on its hull. The metal felt warm like it was alive. "What does it feel like it's waiting for?" With a heavy sigh, Marcus said, "Listen, I know you have instincts. You found good salvage in the past. But this is not the same. We needed that money to pay off what we owed to the Meridian Docking Authority. We have 3 weeks before they take away our business license." Kalen said, 3 weeks is plenty of time, but his voice didn't sound as sure as his words. The truth was that Kalen was very desperate. 5 years ago he was one of the best salvagers in the outer colonies. He had 3 working ships and a crew of 12. Then there was the accident at the Tycho 7 mining station. There was an explosion that he couldn't stop and it killed 2 of his crew members. The lawsuits, the guilt, and the lack of sleep all got to him. His crew left, his reputation fell apart, and he had to sell his ships one by one to pay for his legal fees. Now it was just him and Marcus, working out of a single rented hangar bay and taking any salvage jobs they could find. "I'm going inside," Kalen said as he picked up his toolkit and portable scanner. Marcus yelled after him, "The airlock is probably stuck shut." But when Kalen got close to the main entrance hatch, something strange happened. The metal seemed to shimmer as his hand got closer to the access panel. The old door, which should have been locked tight because it hadn't been used in years, slowly opened with a low grinding noise that Marcus's eyes got bigger. "How did you—" "I didn't do anything," Kalen said in a whisper, just as surprised. Kalen's helmet lamp was the only light in the dark room. The dust looked like tiny stars in the beam. The hallway in front of them had walls with the same vein-like pattern as the outside. They spent hours walking around the ship. The bridge, the engine room, and the crew quarters were all empty and quiet. But there was something odd. Even though it had been left in space for decades, it wasn't badly damaged. No hull breaches, no signs of fire, and no signs of a major failure. It was like the ship had just stopped. Kalen found something in the engine room that made his heart race. The power core housing was empty because the reactor had been taken out a long time ago. But the conduits, the systems that should have broken down without power, looked almost brand new. In some places he could swear that the metal connections had somehow healed themselves, closing gaps that should have been there. Marcus ran his scanner over a wall panel and said, "This doesn't make sense. These readings? Kalen, some of these systems are showing weak energy signatures. But there isn't a power source." Kalen put both of his hands on the main console in the engine room. For a moment he thought he felt something, a pulse like a heartbeat deep down. "What kind of ship was this?" he asked. There was a crowd at the entrance to the hangar. Word got out quickly about Kalen's purchase, and not in a good way. Someone yelled, "The Junkyard King strikes again," and then everyone laughed. Sarah Bennett, a salvage operator who ran the biggest operation on Station Meridian, stood at the front of the crowd with her arms crossed. She was tall and had sharp features, and her business sense was even sharper. "Kalen Ross, ladies and gentlemen," she said in a loud voice. "The man who used to have the golden touch is now only able to buy junk from the past. Kalen, what are you going to do? Make it a very expensive paperweight?" The crowd laughed even more. Kalen stepped off the ship with a tight jaw. He had been made fun of before, but it never got easier. "This ship is worth something, Sarah. You just can't see it." "Oh, I can see it perfectly," she said with a smirk. "I can see a man in need making bad decisions. I heard that you owe money to the docking authority. It's 3 weeks, right? I'll make you an offer right now. I'll give you 10,000 credits for that pile. At least you'll have something." "Not interested." "Your funeral," Sarah said with a shrug and turned to leave. "Come on, everyone. The show is over. Just a sad man holding on to the past." Marcus put a hand on Kalen's shoulder as the crowd began to leave. She might be right. We might want to cut our losses. No, Kalen said firmly, looking up at his ship. There's something here. Important. I can feel it. Kalen couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his small room on the station, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the ship. He had never seen anything like it in 15 years of salvage work. The warm hull, the door that opened by itself, and the strange energy signatures all pointed to something more advanced than normal technology. That he took out his data pad and began to look up information. The Covenant-class explorers were made during Earth's first big push into deep space, which happened between 70 and 90 years ago. They were made for missions that would last a long time in places that had never been explored before. Most of them were taken out of service when newer, faster ships came along. But there was something else. Old reports that mentioned experimental technology and biointegrated systems that were thrown away because they were too expensive and unreliable. Is the ship one of those tests? Kalen went back to the hangar at 3 in the morning because he couldn't stop himself. There wasn't much noise at the station because most people were sleeping. He stood alone in front of the ship and put his hand on the hull again. He whispered, "What are you?" For a second, he could have sworn that the metal under his hand was getting warmer and that the vein-like patterns were glowing with a faint blue light. But everything looked normal again when he blinked. Kalen chose what to do. He didn't care what other people thought. He didn't care that people were making fun of him. He was going to show that this ship was special. "Okay, old girl," he said in a soft voice. "Let's find out what drives you. You and I are both having a hard time. We might be able to change that together." The ship was dark and quiet, but Kalen felt like it could hear him. Deep in its core, something old and patient stirred. It recognized this determined person as the partner it had been looking for decades. The Junkyard King's mistake was about to turn into something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. 3 days went by in a blur of anger and amazement. Kalen hardly ever left the ship. He slept in one of the old crew quarters and ate ration bars while he worked. Marcus came and went, helping when he could, but he got more and more worried every day about their deadline with the docking authority. On the 4th morning, Marcus said, "We have 17 days left. I know you believe in this ship, but we need to be honest. Maybe we should accept Sarah's offer before." "Look at this," Kalen said, pointing to a part of the conduit he had uncovered in the engineering bay. "Take a good look at it." Marcus leaned in and his scanner made a noise. What he saw made him hold his breath. The conduit had been cut off when Kalen first looked at it 2 days ago, but it had somehow reconnected itself. New metal growth had filled in the space, joining the two ends together in a way that looked almost like it was alive. That's not possible," Marcus stammered. "Metal doesn't fix itself. Not without nanite technology, and even then you need a way to control it and a power source." "Exactly," Kalen said, his eyes bright with excitement even though he was tired. "But this ship doesn't have either of those. No power means no working computers. But it's fixing itself." Kalen had written down dozens of similar things that had happened in the last few days. Cracked hull panels that closed on their own. Systems that were broken and slowly rebuilt. It was like the ship was alive and was keeping itself going in a way that he didn't yet understand. Kalen said, "I've been thinking," and then he pulled up plans on his data pad. What if this isn't a problem? What if it was on purpose? While the biointegration experiments were going on, the Covenant-class ships were made. What if this ship has some kind of biological part built into its structure? Marcus said slowly, "You're talking about a living ship." "Kalen, that's not real science. No one has ever made a ship that is truly biointegrated. All of the 2280s experiments failed. Maybe they didn't mess up. Maybe they just went away." Marcus sat down hard on a crate for storage. "Okay, let's say you're right. Let's say this ship has some kind of organic technology in it. What does that do for us? We still can't turn it on. We still can't get it to fly. And we still have to pay the docking authority 43,000 credits in 17 days. Kalen turned back to the ship's systems and ran his hands over the strange vein-like patterns. "These aren't just for show. Like blood vessels or neural pathways, they're part of the system. Marcus, the ship isn't dead. It's not active. Sleep. And I think I know how to wake it up now." "How?" "Like direct connection." The biointegration technology was meant to connect the ship and the pilot in a way that would let them control it in a way that no normal computer system could. But it needed the right kind of pilot, one who could work with the ship's systems. Marcus's eyes got bigger. "Are you really thinking about plugging yourself into this thing?" "Not yet," Kalen said. "First, I need to learn more about how it works." Kalen became obsessed over the next week. He followed every path, made a map of every system and slowly started to figure out how the ship was built. It wasn't just bio-integrated, it was bio-dependent. The ship needed a real pilot to work, someone who could give it the spark of life that would turn on all of its systems. That he felt a strange connection to the ship the more time he spent with it. He sometimes knew which panels to open without looking at the schematics first. He sometimes felt like he had to go to certain areas where repairs were needed. It was like the ship was talking to him, but not with words. It was with feelings and intuition. Marcus saw the difference. You are talking to it, aren't you? I saw you standing in the hallways with your hand on the walls, like you were listening to something. Kalen didn't say no. I think it's trying to wake up all the way, but it needs help to do that. It needs me just as much as I need it. That's crazy talk, Kalen. Maybe. But that's the only reason that makes sense. Kalen had a breakthrough on the 11th day. He found the main neural interface deep in the ship's bridge. It was a pilot's chair that was unlike any other on modern ships. Instead of regular control panels, it had tendrils that looked like they were made of living things. These tendrils would connect to the pilot's nervous system through special interface points. That he shook his hands as he looked at it. This was the answer. This was how the ship was supposed to be steered. That he said, I'm going to try it. Not at all. Marcus grabbed his arm. Kalen, you have no idea what that thing will do to you. It could mess up your nervous system. It could kill you. Or it could save us both, Kalen said in response. Marcus, we only have 6 days left. 6 days until we lose it all. This is our last chance. There has to be a different way. There isn't. You know there isn't. Marcus looked at his friend. He was tired, desperate, and more alive than he had been in years. Kalen had been going through the motions of life since the accident on Tycho 7, feeling guilty and like a failure. But this ship had given him a reason to live again. Marcus said in a quiet voice, if you die, I'm going to be very angry with you. Kalen smiled. Got it? He sat in the pilot's seat and felt the cool surface change to fit his body. The tendrils of the interface hung still, waiting. Kalen took a deep breath and put his hands on the armrest connection points. For a short time, nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, everything happened. There was a flash of light behind Kalen's eyes. It wasn't painful, but it was too much. He could feel the ship all around him, as if his mind had suddenly grown to fill every corridor, system, and atom of the ship. He could feel the slow, steady healing that had been going on for decades. He could feel the ship's past, years of service, a mysterious decommissioning, and years of floating in space, waiting for him to come. The link became stable and Kalen gasped and pulled his hands away. The lights on the bridge turned on for the first time in decades. They gave off a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kalen. Marcus ran to his side. Are you all right? I'm fine, Kalen said, his eyes wide with surprise. Marcus, I was in it. I felt it all. The ship, it's alive. Really alive. And she's been waiting for someone to wake her up. The ship came to life all around them. One by one, systems that had been dead for decades started to work again. The vein-like patterns on the walls glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed in time with the music. The air filter turned on, bringing in fresh oxygen and getting rid of the stale air. There was text on the main view screen in an old Earth language that said, Biosystem integration, 15% complete. Pilot bond set up. Name, Aurora. Full awakening needs more time to interface. Kalen whispered, Aurora, as he read the name of the ship for the first time. Your name is Aurora. The lights got brighter as if to say, yes. Marcus couldn't believe what he saw. This is real. This is real. Kalen, do you know what you found? This isn't just some old junk. This is a new kind of technology. Biointegrated systems that really work. This could change everything. Kalen, on the other hand, wasn't thinking about money or fame. He was thinking about how connected he had felt to this beautiful ship and how much he had wanted to be a part of it. To him, Aurora was more than just a ship. She was more than that, a companion, a partner, or even a friend. Kalen said, we need more time to fully integrate, as he looked at the readouts. The ship needs me to connect with it on a regular basis to finish the bonding process. But Marcus, I think we're going to be fine. I believe Aurora will save us. Neither of them knew how right he was or how soon Aurora would be needed for something much more important than saving a small salvage operation. Something old and terrible was moving in the deep darkness of space, far beyond the outer colonies. A threat that would soon turn its attention to the civilized worlds of the galaxy and the fleets that protected them. But in that hangar on Station Meridian, a salvager and his living ship were making a connection that would save the galaxy in a way no one expected. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood on the bridge of the Valiant, the flagship, and stared at the tactical display with more and more fear. The command crew worked in tense silence around her, their faces lit up by the red emergency lights that had been turned on 20 minutes before. "Confirm those readings," she said, her voice steady even though her stomach was churning with fear. Lieutenant Commander James Park leaned over his console and moved his fingers quickly over the controls. "Yes, Admiral. In the last 48 hours, 6 more colony worlds have gone dark. No calls for help, no attempts to leave. Just silence." Rebecca was 53 years old and had been in the Galactic Defense Fleet for 32 years. She had fought in wars, made peace deals, and led fleets through many difficult situations. But nothing she had ever done had prepared her for this. The first reports from the frontier colonies came in 3 weeks ago. Ships that vanish without a trace. Communication stops working. Survey teams are finding whole towns that have been abandoned, with buildings still standing but no people. At first, Command thought it was thieves or pirates. Then they thought it could be a new illness. They were wrong in both cases. "Show me the last video from Colony World Epsilon 7, Rebecca said. The main view screen flickered and showed grainy security footage from the colony's main hub. People were going about their business, kids were playing in the plaza, and merchants were selling things. Everything seemed normal. Then all of a sudden the sky got dark. Something huge came into view above, blocking out the sun. The camera shook and then the feed went blank. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. What is that?" Rebecca whispered as she looked at the brief glimpse of the huge shape before the feed cut out. "Unknown, Admiral," Park said. "But from the shadow it cast, we think it's at least 5 kilometers wide. Maybe bigger. And we have more than one contact? At least 12 are confirmed. Maybe as many as 20. They're moving through the outer colonies in a planned way, targeting worlds with people on them in a systematic way." Rebecca looked at her communications officer. "How is the emergency fleet mobilization going?" "Admiral, all available ships are being called back. But it will take 4 to 7 days for the whole fleet to get together. At the moment we only have 42 capital ships in place. 42 ships were going to fight an enemy they didn't know how to beat with weapons they weren't sure would work. Get me a direct line to Fleet Command. Encrypted, top priority." Rebecca pulled up the intelligence reports they had been able to get while the communication was being set up. It wasn't a lot. If those ships were enemies, they didn't look like any ships that were in the galactic database. They didn't answer calls. They didn't leave any survivors behind to question. They just showed up, did something that made whole groups of people disappear and then left. It looked like the technology was way more advanced than anything the Galactic Defense Fleet had. Long-range scans showed that some kind of energy manipulation was happening on a huge scale, maybe because of dimensional physics. Their shields, if they had any, seemed to be able to withstand regular gunfire. "Admiral, Fleet Command is on a secure line." The screen showed Admiral Chen's weathered face. He was the oldest and most experienced military leader in the fleet at the age of 70. He had fought in the Outer Rim conflicts and negotiated the Zenith Accords. He said with a stern voice, "Admiral Torres, I've looked over your most recent reports. Things are worse than we thought they would be. How many worlds have gone dark now, sir?" "Confirmed, 17. More than 8 million civilians are expected to die." Chin stopped for a moment and you could see how heavy those numbers were on his face. "Rebecca, we're in danger of going extinct. These things, whatever they are not coming in. They're taking it away. And we don't have a good plan to fight back. Sir, with all due respect, we can't just leave those colonies behind. We have to be smart," Chin said firmly. "Going in without being ready will only cost us ships that we really need. I'm telling all parts of the fleet to go back to their defensive positions around the core worlds while we come up with a plan. A plan to fight an enemy we don't know how to beat with technology we can't match?" Chen's face softened a little. "I know this isn't what you want to hear, Rebecca. But being scared and desperate won't save lives. We need time to look at what we're up against and figure out how to beat it. Everything has a weakness." After the call ended, Rebecca was alone in her ready room, looking out at the stars. An unstoppable force was destroying everything that humans and their allies had built over the course of 3 centuries of space exploration. The Galactic Defense Fleet, with all of its high-tech tools and strong weapons, couldn't stop it. Dr. Michael Winters was having just as much trouble understanding their enemy on the Valiant's science deck. "Do the simulation again," he told his team. They played out a theoretical battle between a standard fleet battle group and one of the mysterious enemy ships for the 12th time, using the little information they had gathered. The results were terrible for the 12th time. The enemy's energy weapons went right through regular shields. Their hull materials could withstand all known types of weapons. And their speed made it seem like they had propulsion technology that was decades ahead of what we have now. Michael looked over the data and said, "We're missing something." He was one of the fleet's youngest chief science officers at the age of 38. He was hired right out of his research job at the Titan Institute. There has to be a pattern. A flaw. Nothing is safe. Dr. Lisa Park, his assistant, shook her head. Perhaps we're not thinking about this the right way. What if normal weapons and tactics just don't work? What if we need something else entirely? Like what? I don't know. Something not normal. Something they won't expect because it doesn't fit with how the military usually works. Michael was about to answer when a message popped up on his screen. We're getting new information from the drones that are flying around Colony World Theta 9. They got something before they lost touch. He pulled up the feed. The strange enemy ship showed up on screen, and for the first time they could see it clearly. It was big and had sharp edges. The material on it seemed to soak up light instead of reflecting it. But the energy readings were what really caught Michael's eye. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a certain frequency. "Those energy spikes aren't random. They have a beat. Like a pulse." "Biological?" Lisa asked. "Maybe. Or it could be biomechanical. In either case, this suggests that these ships may not be purely technological. There could be an organic part." "What does that mean?" Michael leaned back in his chair and thought a lot. "That means that things that don't work against normal technology might work against them. Viruses. Agents that are biological." He stopped talking and an idea came to him. "Or what? Or maybe we need technology that can change and respond in ways that program systems can't. Something that can think, respond, and fix itself." He shook his head. "It's a long shot. And I'm not even sure that kind of technology exists outside of research." But Michael remembered reading about experimental bio-integrated ship systems from decades ago. Systems that were left behind because they were too hard to control and too unpredictable. Not normal enough. Admiral Torres got an urgent message from Station Meridian, one of the biggest civilian stations in the outer colonies, while he was on the bridge of the Valiant. "Admiral, we're starting to evacuate people in an emergency. We found energy signatures that match those of the enemy ships. They're coming our way. ETA 48 hours. Rebecca's blood ran cold. Over 200,000 civilians lived at Station Meridian. Even with all the available transport ships, getting that many people out in 48 hours would be almost impossible. Start the emergency plans," she said. "Get every civilian vehicle you can to that station. Priority A." Rebecca made a choice while her crew rushed to get everyone out. Whether she got orders or not, she wasn't going to sit back and watch another city get wiped out. "Helm, set a course for Station Meridian. The fastest speed." "Admiral, we have orders to stay put." "Lieutenant, I know what our orders are. But I won't leave those people without protection. We might not be able to stop these things, but we can buy time for the evacuation." The Valiant and its small group of escorts turned towards Station Meridian, racing against time to get there before the unknown enemy did. Kalen Ross had no idea that the galaxy's crisis was about to hit his doorstep. He was working in a dusty hangar bay on that same station. He was too focused on getting to know Aurora better, learning how her systems worked and feeling her mind merge with his. In 2 days, his worthless salvage would be the most valuable thing in the galaxy. But first, Kalen and the whole galaxy would have to deal with the storm that was coming. The shadow that was about to fall on Station Meridian would change everything. It was a mess when Station Meridian had to be evacuated. When Kalen and Marcus came out of their hangar, they saw that the hallways were full of scared civilians trying to get to the transport docks. Kids were crying, parents were yelling, and the station's security guards were having a hard time keeping things in order. "What's going on?" Marcus grabbed a security guard who was walking by. "The fleet saw enemy signatures coming our way," the officer said, her face pale. "They're getting everyone out. You have about 6 hours to leave this station." She ran away quickly, leaving Kalen and Marcus stunned. "Enemy?" Kalen said again. "What enemy?" They quickly got to the station's public information network and found out the truth. Kalen had only been thinking about Aurora for the past 3 weeks, but an unknown force had been systematically destroying outer colony worlds. There were millions of people missing or dead. And now that same force was going straight toward Station Meridian. "We have to go," Marcus said in a hurry. "Now. We can get in one of the little transport pods." Kalen's eyes were distant when he said, "No. Good morning, Aurora. I need to see how Aurora is doing." "Kalen, there's no time. That ship isn't even able to fly yet." But Kalen was already on his way back to the hangar. Some instinct inside him, based on his growing bond with Aurora, told him the ship was important, that she was necessary. When he broke through the hangar doors, Aurora's lights were flashing quickly, and the blue light had a hint of red in it. The ship was aware. She somehow knew that danger was coming. Kalen ran to the bridge, sat down in the pilot's chair, and put his hands on the interface points. The connection was instant and too much to handle. Aurora's mind and his own mind became one, and all of a sudden he could feel everything. The threat coming, the fear of the people on the station, and the fleet's desperation. He could feel Aurora's answer. She was ready. The screen said, 67% of biosystem integration is complete. Warning, full integration takes more time. There are emergency protocols available. Go. Yes, Kalen whispered, and the world came alive with feeling. As Aurora's systems came back online for the first time in decades, he felt a surge of energy. He felt the engine start up, the ship's self-repair systems speed up a lot, and Aurora's weapon systems, he didn't know they existed, begin to charge. The doors to the hangar, which had been locked during the evacuation, suddenly flew open. Aurora rose smoothly from the deck, moving with a grace that made her look smaller than she was. Marcus, who had followed Kalen inside, stood on the bridge in shock. How are you doing this? You don't know how to fly this thing at all. I'm not flying her, Kalen said, his voice far away and his eyes glowing blue. We're going to fly together. Aurora floated out of the hangar and into open space. Kalen's heightened awareness immediately picked up on the tactical situation. The Valiant and 3 escort ships had put themselves in between the station and the threat that was coming. Many transport ships full of civilians were running away in the other direction. And then, coming out of the dark of space, something horrible came. The enemy ship was huge, at least 5 kilometers wide, and its surface was an unnatural black that seemed to absorb light. It moved forward without any visible force, like a shark swimming through water. Energy crackled across its surface in ways that made it hard to look at. Admiral Torres was getting ready for what she knew would be her last battle on the Valiant's bridge. She calmly told all the ships, weapons free. Hit that ship with everything we've got. It will be worth it if we can get those transports 10 more minutes. The Valiant and its guards started shooting. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and electromagnetic pulse weapons all fired at the enemy ship from the fleet. Nothing worked. The weapons either disappeared against an invisible wall or worse, were absorbed by the enemy ship's hull, which made it seem stronger. Return fire, Torres said quietly, watching the surface of the enemy ship start to glow. The enemy ship fired energy beams, weapons that were unlike anything humans had ever made. They didn't just destroy things, they unmade them, which made matter itself fall apart. The Defender, one of the escort ships, was hit directly. It didn't blow up. It just stopped existing, disappearing from sensors as if it had never been there. All ships moved to avoid. Torres gave the order, but she knew it wouldn't work. The enemy was too strong and too smart. In a few minutes they would all be dead like the Defender. Then something that couldn't happen did. A new ship came out of Station Meridian and showed up on the tactical display. It was smaller than the ships in the fleet, but it moved very quickly. And its energy signature was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It was a mix of readings from technology and biology that didn't make sense. Admiral, we have an unidentified vessel entering the combat zone, Lieutenant Park reported. I don't know what it is. The readings are totally out of the ordinary. Kalen felt more alive than ever on the bridge of the Aurora. He knew things he shouldn't have known because of his connection to the ship. Aurora's bioorganic systems gave her abilities that no other ship had. She could change, learn, and get better. And most importantly, her mixed nature made her immune to the energy weapons that were destroying the fleet's ships. Let's show them what we can do, girl, Kalen said quietly. Aurora sped up and raced past the Valiant toward the enemy ship. It looked like suicide on the fleet's sensors. Every ship's crew watched in horror as this unknown ship sped straight toward the enemy who couldn't be stopped. The enemy ship saw Aurora and shot at it. The same energy beam that had destroyed the Defender shot out toward the smaller ship. But Aurora didn't break. Her hull absorbed the blow, and the bioorganic materials spread the energy through her systems like a living body spreads poison through its bloodstream. There was damage. Kalen felt it like pain in his own body, but Aurora's self-repair systems kicked in right away, fixing the damage almost as fast as it happened. Impossible, Torres said, watching the small ship survive an attack that should have destroyed it. Kalen brought Aurora in closer to the enemy ship than any of the fleet's ships had ever dared. He could feel Aurora studying the enemy through the link. Her organic systems could pick up on patterns and weaknesses that tech sensors couldn't. There is a rhythm to the enemy's energy field. A pulse that made things weak for a short time. Aurora's weapons turned on. They weren't regular missiles or plasma cannons. They were bioenergy projectors that shot concentrated bursts of living energy. Each shot changed its course in mid-flight based on real-time analysis of the target. The first shots hit the enemy ship, and for the first time the huge ship moved. It was moving forward smoothly, but then it stopped. It had a flickering energy field. All fleet ships, aim for that ship now. Torres gave the order. Whatever that strange ship is doing, it's working. The Valiant and the other escorts opened fire again, and this time their guns hit their targets. Not much though, the enemy was still too strong. But damage was happening. The enemy ship started to pull back from Station Meridian. Kalen took advantage of Aurora's eagerness to fight. They danced around the huge enemy ship, too quickly for its weapons to follow, hitting the weak spots. Aurora felt something and its energy patterns changed. The enemy ship fired one last deadly shot, not at Aurora or the fleet, but at Station Meridian itself. Torres was horrified to see the energy beam shoot toward the station where thousands of civilians were still stuck. But Aurora was quicker. The ship surged between the beam and the station, taking the full force. The damage was terrible. Kalen screamed because he could feel Aurora's pain, her systems failing, and her death. But Aurora's sacrifice bought valuable seconds, even as she took the hit. The fleet's weapons hit a weak spot in the enemy ship's structure, and for the first time real damage was done. A huge explosion shook the enemy's hull. The enemy ship quickly pulled back, going back into the dark where it came from. The fight was over. Aurora floated in space, her lights flickering weakly. Kalen was slumped in the pilot's chair, blood running from his nose and his body shaking from the trauma of feeling Aurora's near-death. "Hey, Kalen." Marcus put his hands on his friend's shoulders. "Don't leave me." Kalen whispered, "Aurora. She got hurt. Marcus, she saved them all." "She saved everyone." The ship's self-repair systems were working, but they were taking a long time. There had been a lot of damage. It would take a while to get better. On the Valiant, Admiral Torres stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Bring me all the information we have about that ship. I want to know what it is, where it came from, and why it saved us all." The investigation quickly led them to the records of Station Meridian and a salvager named Kalen Ross. Torres stood on Aurora's bridge 2 hours later, looking at the tired man in the pilot's chair and the amazing ship that had changed everything. "Mr. Ross," she said in a formal way, "thank you for what you did today on behalf of the Galactic Defense Fleet. You saved the lives of thousands of people." Kalen looked up at her. His eyes still had a faint blue glow from his connection to Aurora. "Admiral, I didn't do it by myself. Aurora is the good guy. She knew what she had to do." Torres looked around at the ship and saw the organic patterns, the blinking lights, and the clear signs of living technology. "Mr. Ross, what is this ship?" "She's a Covenant-class explorer with new bio-integrated systems. People thought she was a worthless piece of junk. But Admiral, she's alive. And I think she's just what we need to fight these things." Torres was quiet for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Mr. Ross, I need your help. Both of you. The enemy we are up against is too strong for our fleet to handle with regular technology. But if your ship can do what you did today..." She stopped. "Is Aurora able to fight again?" Kalen felt through the ship's connection. Aurora was hurt but getting better, and more than that, she was willing. She knew what was at stake. "Yes," he said with confidence. "We'll fight. Aurora and I are together. We'll help you stop these things." "Okay," Torres said. "Because this fight was only the start. The enemy is still out there, and they won't stop until we find a way to beat them for good." When Torres left to talk to Fleet Command, Marcus looked at his friend with both pride and worry. "You know they're going to want you to fight more wars, right? This isn't something that will happen just once." Kalen nodded, feeling Aurora's steady presence in his head. "I understand. But Marcus, I feel like I'm doing something important for the first time since Tycho 7. We can make a difference, Aurora and I. We can save lives instead of taking them." The useless salvage had turned into the fleet's unexpected weapon. People made fun of the Junkyard King, but he became a hero. But the real test was still ahead. Because the enemy had run away, not been beaten. And when they came back, they would come back in full force. Kalen and Aurora would have to be ready. After the battle at Station Meridian, Kalen and Aurora stayed at a military shipyard in orbit around the planet New Terra for 3 days. Fleet Command had insisted on looking at the ship to learn more about the technology that had worked against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. Dr. Michael Winters was in charge of the research team, and he treated Aurora with the respect a scientist would show when they found something new. "Unbelievable," he said, running his scanners over Aurora's hull. The bioorganic materials are not like anything we have in our database. They're not just able to fix themselves, they're also able to change. Every time the ship gets hurt, the materials learn and get stronger against that kind of attack. Kalen, who was in the pilot's chair even during the tests, could tell that Aurora was uncomfortable being looked at like a specimen. "Doctor, she doesn't like all these scans and probes. She isn't a machine. She has feelings." Michael was very interested in him. "And you can feel those feelings?" "Through the neural interface. That's not all there is to it. When I talk to Aurora, we're not separate anymore. I know how she feels. I know what she knows. We think together." "Extraordinary," Michael said quietly. "Mr. Ross, do you know what you stand for?" People thought this level of biointegration could happen, but it never did. You and Aurora are proof that human consciousness and advanced technology can come together to make something better than either one alone. Michael's team made a number of important discoveries in the days that followed. The way Aurora's bioorganic systems worked made her naturally resistant to the dimensional energy weapons that the enemy used. These weapons ripped apart regular ships, but Aurora could absorb the energy and spread it out through her living systems. Also, because she was adaptable, she learned and got better with each new experience. But there was a problem. Aurora could only be effective if Kalen was close to her. She was just a dormant ship without a pilot connected to her systems. She became something amazing with Kalen. Admiral Torres called a meeting in her ready room on the Valiant to talk about strategy. Admiral Chen was there through a secure hologram, as were Dr. Winters, Kalen, and a few fleet commanders. Torres started, "Gentlemen, the enemy has pulled back for now, but our scouts say they're gathering in large numbers near the Rigel sector. Intelligence says they are getting ready to attack the inner colonies in a big way. If they get past our defenses, they'll have a clear path to Earth itself." The hologram of Admiral Chen said, "We're putting together the biggest fleet in history, 200 capital ships and 500 support ships. But based on what we've done before, that might not be enough. The enemy's technology is just too advanced." Everyone looked at Kalen. Torres went on, "That's why we need Aurora. I know this isn't what you signed up for, Mr. Ross. You are not a soldier, you are a salvager. But you and your ship are our best chance to win. Will you help us?" Kalen could feel Aurora in his mind, calm and determined. 3 days ago they had already made this choice. "We'll fight, Admiral. But I need you to know that I'm not a professional pilot. I'm making this up as I go along, trusting Aurora's instincts as much as my own." Dr. Winters said, "That might be just what we need. Unusual strategies for an unusual situation. The enemy has shown that they can change their plans to fit standard military tactics. But because of who Aurora is, she acts outside of those rules." The hologram of Admiral Chin nodded. "Mr. Ross, I'm giving you the job of a special operative with the fleet. You will have the freedom to fight the enemy however you see fit. Your job is to break up their formations, find their weak spots, and make openings for our troops to take advantage of." Marcus, who had been standing still in the corner, spoke up. "And I'm going with him. Kalen needs someone to take care of the systems and keep an eye on him while he flies." Torres smiled a little. "Agreed. Welcome to the fleet, Mr. Chin." It took 5 days at full speed to get to the Rigel sector. The fleet that had come together was impressive. It had ships of all sizes and types, representing humans and a dozen other species that were allied with them. Kalen, on the other hand, could feel the fear underneath. Everyone knew what they were up against. Kalen spent every free moment on the trip talking to Aurora, which made their bond stronger. The ship's biointegration level had gone up to 94%, and he could tell. Aurora's answers were quicker and made more sense. He didn't always have to tell her what to do, she just knew what he wanted and did it. He also learned how to do new things. Aurora had weapon systems that he didn't know about, like bioenergy torpedoes that could track targets and change their explosive yield while they were flying. She also had defensive fields that weren't shields in the usual sense, but rather extensions of her organic hull that could absorb and redirect energy. She was a full-on fighting platform made just for situations where regular technology couldn't handle them. The fleet got to the Rigel sector on the 5th day, and it became clear how big and scary the enemy force was. "Admiral, the sensors are reading. This can't be right," Lieutenant Park said on the bridge of the Valiant. "I see 47 enemy contacts. All of the signatures are huge. 47 of the ships that almost sank the Valiant and its escorts. A fleet of nightmares, lined up in a perfect geometric shape, is waiting." "They knew we were coming," Torres said in a low voice. "This is a trap. All fleet elements, battle stations," Admiral Chin said over the fleet-wide channel. "Keep in mind what you learned. Target priorities as we talked about. And may all the gods you believe in keep an eye on us. The fleet moved forward in formation with the capital ships in the middle and smaller ships around them to protect them. Kalen put Aurora in front of the main fleet at the front. Are you ready for this? From the secondary station, Marcus asked, his hands hovering over the controls for the systems. Kalen's hands were on the interface points, his eyes were closed, and his mind was one with Aurora's. We were born prepared. Weren't we, girl? The ship's lights pulsed in response, and Kalen could feel Aurora's excitement. Not bloodthirsty, the ship wasn't mean or violent. But she knew they had to do what they were about to do. These enemy ships were a threat to everything. They had to be stopped. The fight started. The enemy fleet fired first, sending dozens of those horrible dimensional energy beams across space. The fleet's ships spread out to avoid the worst of the barrage. 3 ships disappeared in the first volley as if they never existed. After that, the galactic defense fleet fired back, and space turned into a storm of energy and destruction. Kalen led Aurora right into the middle of the enemy formation. His instincts told him to turn back, but he trusted Aurora and she trusted him. The enemy had never seen anything like them before. They were something that didn't follow the rules of engagement that the enemy knew. Aurora zipped between enemy ships, firing her bioenergy weapons in patterns that looked random but were actually planned by her organic systems to do the most damage. She wasn't trying to sink the enemy ships. That would have been impossible. Instead, she aimed for their energy fields, throwing off the patterns that made their weapons so deadly. Look! One of the fleet commanders yelled over the command channel. That little ship, whatever it's doing, it's working. The enemy's shooting patterns are getting crazy. Admiral Torres saw his chance. All ships, fire at the enemy ships that are fighting with our mystery ship. Plan your attacks around how it moves. The fleet changed its plans, using Aurora to confuse the enemy ships while bringing all of their firepower to bear on them. It was working, but slowly and with a lot of pain. Enemy ships started to take real damage. But the enemy changed too. Several of the huge ships broke away from their formation and came at Aurora from different directions. They had found the threat and were getting rid of it. Kalen felt Aurora's alarm as 6 different ships' energy beams hit them at the same time. There was no way to get away from all of them. He yelled, "Hold on," to Marcus and then did something he'd never done before. He pushed the connection with Aurora deeper than Dr. Winters had said was safe. His mind didn't just join the ship, it became the ship. For a short, amazing moment, Kalen Ross was no longer a separate person. Only Aurora was there, a living ship made of organic technology and human will, moving through space with impossible grace. The ship didn't avoid the attacks. She took them in and sent the huge amount of energy through her bioorganic systems, changing it and changing it. She didn't attack when she let that energy out. Instead, it sent out a pulse in all directions. The energy fields around the enemy ships flickered and then stopped working. Not forever. They would heal in a few seconds, but for that short time they were weak. Now! Torres yelled into the fleet channel. Hit them now! 200 capital ships fired at the same time, and this time their weapons hit their targets. The enemy fleet was rocked by explosions. 5 of the huge ships were completely destroyed. A dozen more were badly hurt. The enemy fleet started to pull back from the devastating coordinated attack. But winning came at a price. Aurora's systems started to break down because they were overloaded with all the energy they were taking in and changing. Kalen, who was still connected to the ship, felt every system that failed as if it were hurting his own body. He pulled away from the deep connection, gasping and bleeding from his ears and nose. Aurora floated in space, her lights flickering weakly as her self-repair systems tried to deal with the terrible damage. As Kalen fell forward, Marcus grabbed him. "Kalen, don't fall asleep. Don't you dare die on me." "Aurora," Kalen whispered softly. "She hurts so much. Marcus, I can hardly feel her anymore." Torres watched from the Valiant as the enemy fleet completely retreated, vanishing into the depths of space. They won the battle, but it cost them a lot. 37 fleet ships were sunk and thousands died. And the little ship that had made victory possible was dying. "Send emergency repair teams to that ship right away." Torres told them to do it. "I don't care what it takes. Get that ship and its pilot out of there." As medical teams rushed to Aurora and carefully pulled Kalen out of the pilot's chair, he was still only half conscious and still connected to the ship in some way. He could feel her struggling to stay alive, her bioorganic systems working hard to fix serious damage. "Don't give up," he whispered to her, even as medics took him to the hospital. "We did it, Aurora. We did it. You need to get better now. You need to stay alive. I need you. You are needed by the fleet." Something in Aurora's organic core heard his plea and responded. The self-repair systems, which were about to stop working completely, became stable. The ship was badly hurt, but she wouldn't die. Not when her pilot needed her to. Not when there were still battles to win. Aurora started to heal herself slowly and with a lot of pain. It would take a while, maybe days or weeks. But she would make it. And Kalen would be there too, lying in the medical bay. His life signs were stable, but his mind was still partly connected to his ship. They were both recovering together, and what they had been through would change them both forever. The tide had changed. The enemy could be defeated. And the galaxy now knew that the only thing that could save them was the strong bond between a salvager and his living ship, not bigger weapons or stronger shields. The useless ship had turned out to be very useful. But the war was far from over. 3 weeks went by. Kalen woke up slowly in the medical bay of New Terra Station. His body hurt, but it was still whole. He didn't think about himself at first. He thought about Aurora. He reached out with his mind, looking for the connection that had become as natural to him as breathing. There she was. Far away, still healing, but there. He felt so much relief that tears ran down his face. "She's fine," he said in a low voice. "She lived." A voice that sounded familiar said, "So did you." Marcus sat in a chair next to the bed, looking tired but happy. It was close for a while, though. The doctor said they had never seen neural patterns like yours before. You were mostly unconscious for 3 days, and when you did wake up, you kept asking about Aurora. Kalen said, "I could feel her the whole time," as he slowly sat up. "Even when I was asleep, we were still connected. I could feel her fighting to stay alive and her body healing." "Marcus, what happened after the fight?" Marcus's face got serious. "We won, but just barely. After you messed with their energy fields, the enemy ran away. Fleet Command thinks we either destroyed or badly damaged about 15 of their ships. They fell back to regroup, which gave us time." He stopped. "Kalen, you're a hero. People are talking about what you and Aurora did. The Junkyard King saved the galaxy, and it's all over the news." Kalen shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I found an amazing ship while I was salvaging." Dr. Michael Winters walked into the medical bay with a data pad and said, "You're selling yourself short as usual. Mr. Ross, or should I say Commander Ross, since Admiral Torres has officially made you a commander, your bond with Aurora has given us important information about how to fight this enemy. We've been looking at the battle data, and the fact that your ship can change is what will keep us alive." "Sir?" Kalen said it again, shocked. Michael said, "Fleet Command's decision. They want you and Aurora to be a permanent part of the defense fleet. They want to know how your biointegration works so they can try to copy it." Kalen felt a chill down his spine. "Do it again?" "Michael, Aurora is not a model. She is one of a kind and alive. You can't just make more ships like her." Michael said softly, "We know. And Admiral Torres agrees with you. But some people in Fleet Command see Aurora as a weapon that can be copied. Kalen, you need to be careful. Things that are valuable draw the wrong kind of attention, and you've become very valuable." Admiral Torres came into the medical bay with a serious look on her face before Kalen could answer. "Mr. Ross, I'm happy to see you awake. We need to have a conversation about what's going on." She brought up a holographic screen. "The enemy came back together faster than we thought. They've attacked 3 inner colonies at the same time. We fought them, but without Aurora we're losing a lot of people." Kalen said right away, "Aurora's not ready to fight yet." He was worried about his ship. "She's still getting better from the last fight." "I understand. And I wouldn't ask you to fly her in her current state." Torres looked at him with a fierce look. "But I need your help, Kalen. You somehow messed up the enemy's energy fields during the battle in the Rigel sector. We need to know how so that we can make weapons or strategies that can do the same thing without putting Aurora in danger." Kalen closed his eyes and reached for Aurora, sensing her presence. He could tell she wanted to help and that she knew others needed to learn what she knew. "I'll give it a shot," he said. "But Admiral, I need you to know that what Aurora and I did wasn't planned. It was a gut feeling. I can't promise that I'll be able to explain it in a way that helps. Anything you can tell us could save lives." Kalen worked with Dr. Winters and a group of scientists for the next week to try to explain the intuitive understanding he had gained from his relationship with Aurora. It was hard work to put into words what he felt as pure instinct and sensation. "Energy fields aren't just shields for the enemy," he said during one session. "Everything is connected, including their propulsion and weapon systems. Aurora didn't attack just one system when she disrupted them. She was going after the harmonic resonance that connected everything." "But how did Aurora know that resonance?" Michael asked, moving his stylus quickly across his data pad. "She felt it," Kalen said with no way to help. The bioorganic systems in her hull are sensitive to energy patterns in ways that sensors can't copy. Feels like. He looked for an example. It's like asking how you can tell if someone is watching you. You just know, right? Aurora feels these energy patterns in the same way. The team made progress even though translating was hard. They made prototype weapons that were meant to mess up certain frequency ranges that Aurora had found. They weren't as good as Aurora, but they did give the fleet more options. At the same time, Aurora was still recovering in a special dock where Dr. Winters' team could keep an eye on her progress. Kalen came to see her every day and sat in the pilot's chair with his hands on the interface points, just being there with her while she fixed herself. Sarah Bennett, the rival salvager from Station Meridian, showed up at the dock entrance during one of these visits. She looked different, humbled, maybe even sorry. "Kalen," she said softly. "Can we talk?" He didn't want to, but he disconnected from Aurora. "What do you want, Sarah?" "To say I'm sorry." She got closer, and her usual arrogance was gone. "I made fun of you. I said your ship was junk that wasn't worth anything. I tried to get you to sell her to me for a small part of what she was worth. Everything I thought was wrong." Kalen looked at her and saw that she was truly sorry. "Sarah, why are you here?" "Because I've been thinking about what you found. Wasn't Aurora the only test ship from that program? There were 12 Covenant-class Explorer ships built. Most of them were taken out of service and thrown away, but..." She took out a data pad. "I've been going through old records. I found mentions of 3 other Covenant-class ships that are no longer in official records. They weren't thrown away. They were put away and forgotten." Kalen's heart started to race. "Do you think there are other ships like Aurora?" "Possibly. If we could find them and they have similar bioorganic systems." Sarah looked him in the eye. "We could give the fleet more weapons to use against this enemy. And maybe we could find pilots who can connect with them like you did with Aurora." Kalen thought it was a tempting idea, but he wasn't sure. "Our relationship with Sarah, Aurora, and I is special. I don't know if it can be copied. But what if it can? What if there are other people out there who have the same potential as you?" Sarah's voice got more passionate. "Kalen, you showed everyone that ship was wrong. You saw worth where no one else did. We might need to start looking at people the same way by finding those who have been ignored or written off by others." Before Kalen could say anything, alarms went off all over the station. "All fleet personnel to battle stations." An emergency announcement rang out through the halls. "The enemy has gotten past the defensive perimeter. Many contacts are going straight to New Terra." Kalen ran back to Aurora's bridge, where they could feel how the ship was responding through their connection. She was still hurt and only able to work at about 70% of her full capacity. But she was ready to fight. He said no out loud as he sat down in the pilot's chair. "Aurora, you're not ready yet. You need more time to get better." The lights on the ship kept flashing. Kalen could feel Aurora's determination through their bond. She could feel the hundreds of thousands of civilians on the station who would die if the enemy wasn't stopped. She could sense that Kalen wanted to protect them. And she knew that sometimes it was more important to be needed than to be ready. The screen said, "Biosystem integration, 97% complete. We need you, pilot. Go ahead." Marcus ran onto the bridge, out of breath. "Kalen, what are you up to?" "Aurora isn't ready to..." Kalen cut in, "We don't have a choice," and put his hands on the interface points. "She knows it." "I know it. Are you with us, Marcus?" Marcus thought about it for a second before taking his place. "Always, brother. Let's show them what the king of the junkyard can do." Aurora rose from her dock, and her engines lit up with that blue-white glow that is so typical of them. She moved more slowly than before and her movements were less fluid. But she was flying and ready to fight. Kalen saw the enemy force, 10 huge ships moving in perfect formation toward New Terra, as they left the station and entered open space. The fleet that was defending was already fighting, but they were losing. Kalen whispered, "Aurora, let's end this. For all the people they've hurt. For everyone we will save. Together." The ship moved forward quickly and the pilot and the ship became one. The last battle for New Terra had begun, and the worthless salvage would show once more that true value can't be seen. There was a lot of fire and destruction around New Terra. Kalen saw through Aurora's sensors that the defending fleet was fighting hard against the enemy armada. Ships blew up in bright flashes and debris fell like deadly rain. The enemy ships' dimensional energy weapons tore reality apart wherever they hit. "Kalen, Tactical says we should focus on the lead vessel," Marcus said, his voice tense as he kept an eye on their systems. "If we can mess it up like we did in the Rigel sector." "I know," Kalen said, but his voice shook. He could feel how weak she was because of his bond with Aurora. She was willing and even brave, but she wasn't at her best. What he was about to ask her to do might be too much. He whispered, "Aurora," and their minds became one. "I won't force you. This is too much." The ship didn't answer with words but with pure emotion, determination, loyalty, and something that felt a lot like love. For decades, Aurora had been asleep, all alone and forgotten. Kalen had given her a reason to live, given her life. She would do anything to keep him and the people he loved safe. Kalen's tears flowed as he felt her strength. "Okay, together then. All the way." Aurora sped up, moving through the chaos of battle with a grace that didn't match her broken state. Enemy fire shot toward them, but Aurora's adaptive hull spread out most of the energy. Her bioorganic systems worked hard to keep her and her pilot safe. They got closer to the enemy ship in front of them, and Kalen could feel Aurora looking at its energy patterns, looking for the harmonic weaknesses she had used before. But this time things were different. The enemy had changed. They had changed their energy fields to make them stronger against the specific frequencies that Aurora had used before. Kalen said, "They learned from our last fight. Marcus, they've changed their defenses." "Then we changed too," Marcus said, his fingers flying over the console. "Aurora's adaptable, right? Can she find new frequencies to aim at?" Kalen and Aurora looked for more things together as they got to know each other better. Aurora didn't do math like a computer, she sensed things instead. She could feel the patterns in the energy fields like how a living thing can feel vibrations in the air. There, a new point of resonance. There, but deeper and more subtle. "Found it," Kalen said. "But Aurora, this is going to hurt. I can sense it. To hit this frequency, you'll need to send energy through your broken systems." Aurora's answer was quick and clear, "Do it." The ship's bioenergy weapons charged up by taking energy from her core. Kalen felt the strain like knives cutting through his own body. Aurora was pushing herself too hard, making systems that were already broken work at levels they weren't ready for. They shot. The concentrated bioenergy pulse hit the field of the lead enemy ship, and this time the effect was even stronger than before. The enemy ship's whole energy matrix broke down, causing failures to spread through all of its connected systems. "The fleet," Marcus yelled. "Attacking them." All of the fleet's ships that could reach the enemy ship that was easy to hit opened fire. Even its huge size couldn't handle the combined barrage. The enemy ship started to fall apart as explosions tore through its structure. But Aurora had to pay a terrible price. All of the system's warning lights went on. Kalen felt pain through their connection as Aurora's self-repair systems fought against terrible damage. The effort to fire that gun had ripped open wounds that were just starting to heal and made new ones. "Hold on, Aurora." Kalen begged, but he could feel her slipping away. The other enemy ships started to pull back when they saw their leader get killed. But one of them, either out of anger or desperation, fired one last shot. It wasn't at the fleet, it was at New Terra Station where millions of civilians were hiding. The dimensional energy beam shot through space, unstoppable and unavoidable. It would hit the station in seconds and destroy everyone inside. Kalen didn't think. He didn't have time to think. He just had to act because he felt so close to Aurora. They got up and moved. Aurora jumped in front of the energy beam, stopping it just a few kilometers from the station. The damage was terrible. The dimensional energy ripped into Aurora's hull, destroying her bioorganic materials faster than they could heal or adapt. Kalen screamed as he felt Aurora's systems fail one by one and she died. But even as she died, Aurora's last act was to protect. She focused the dimensional energy through her core, keeping it from getting to the station behind her. The enemy ships jumped away and vanished into the dark space they had come from. The fight was over. But after that, Aurora drifted through the dark and quiet, her lights out and her systems down. Kalen stayed slumped in the pilot's chair, his hands still on the interface points, and tears were streaming down his face. "No," he said in a hoarse voice. "No, Aurora, please. Please don't go. Please don't go." Marcus knelt down next to him, his own face wet with tears. "We need to disconnect you, Kalen. The medical teams." "She's going to die," Kalen cried. "I can feel her dying, Marcus. She saved everyone, but now she's going to die." Emergency crews got there and cut their way into Aurora's bridge. Dr. Winters personally took Kalen out of the pilot's chair, carefully unplugging the neural interface while medical scanners kept an eye on his vital signs. One doctor said, "His neural patterns are getting unstable. The connection is dragging him down with the ship." "Cut it now," ordered Winters. They gave Kalen neural blockers which made the disconnection happen. He fell down, his mind suddenly and violently ripped away from Aurora's dying systems. Before he passed out, he felt a deep sense of loss, as if a piece of his soul had been ripped away. Kalen woke up in the medical bay with a blank mind. There was silence where Aurora had been for the first time in months. The bond that had grown as strong as his own heartbeat was gone. "Aurora," he said, sitting up even though the medical restraints were on. "Where is she?" Dr. Winters put a hand on Kalen's shoulder and said, "Kalen, calm down. Aurora is in very bad shape. We have her in the most up-to-date repair shop we have. Every expert on the ship is doing everything they can to save her. I have to see her. I need to talk to her." Winters gently interrupted, "You can't. Kalen, your neural patterns were so closely linked to hers that when she started to die, you started to die too. We had to cut the link to save your life. Right now, if you try to reconnect, it could kill you both." Kalen fell back on the bed, feeling like the emptiness inside him would eat him alive. He said in a low voice, "She saved everyone. Her sacrifice saved millions of lives. And now she might die because I pushed her too hard." Admiral Torres walked into the room with a serious look on her face. "Commander Ross, we won because of you and Aurora. The enemy fleet turned around. New Terra is safe. Early reports say that we may have dealt a major blow to the enemy by destroying or damaging more than 30 of their ships. They might not have the means to keep attacking." Kalen asked angrily, "At what cost? Aurora could die. And she only took that hit because I told her to fight when she wasn't ready." Torres said firmly, "She made her choice. The information we got back from her systems shows that Aurora knew there was a risk. She decided to fight anyway because she knew what was at stake. Commander, that's not your fault. That's what it means to be a hero." But Kalen couldn't get rid of the guilt. He had found Aurora, woken her up, and told her to fight. Now she might die because of it. The Junkyard King had turned worthless salvage into the galaxy's salvation, but the price might be more than he could bear. For 6 days, Aurora remained in critical condition. Her self-repair mechanisms worked sluggishly, barely keeping her alive but unable to heal the catastrophic damage. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, but bioorganic technology was so poorly understood that they were essentially guessing. Kalen remained in the medical bay, refusing to leave, even though he couldn't connect with Aurora. He could only wait and hope. On the 7th day, something changed. Dr. Winters ran into Kalen's room, his eyes wide with excitement. "Kalen, Aurora's systems for fixing themselves just went up. She's getting better faster. We don't know why, but..." Kalen was already running toward the repair shop where Aurora was kept. He understood what Winters meant when he got there. The hull of Aurora, which had been dark and dead, now glowed with a faint blue light. The vein-like patterns throbbed slowly but steadily. "She's fighting," Kalen said, tears of joy streaming down his face. "She's not going to give up." Kalen climbed into Aurora's broken bridge and sat in the pilot's chair, even though Dr. Winters told him not to. He didn't fully connect because he still had the neural blockers in his system, but he put his hands on the interface points and talked to her. "Aurora, I'm here. Sorry for pushing you too hard. I'm sorry I asked too much of you. But please keep going. You are needed by the galaxy. Your fleet needs you." He stopped and his voice broke. "I need you. You're more than just a ship to me. You're my partner. My buddy. Please don't go." The lights got brighter, and even though Kalen couldn't fully feel Aurora's mind through the blockers, he could tell how she felt. She heard him. And she was trying hard to get back. Aurora's health got better slowly over the next 2 weeks. Her self-repair systems, which had seemed like they were about to fail completely, somehow found the strength to keep going. The living ship healed itself a little at a time, system by system. After 10 days, the doctors took Kalen's neural blockers out, letting him fully connect with Aurora again. When the connection came back together, Kalen gasped at the rush of feelings that flowed through it. Aurora's happiness at feeling him again, her determination to get better, and her gratitude for his presence during her darkest times. "I'm here," Kalen said, his voice low and tears streaming down his face. "I'm not going anywhere. Remember that we heal together? That's what partners do." 3 weeks after the battle, Aurora turned on her engines for the first time since she almost died. The blue-white light from her engines lit up the repair shop, and everyone who had worked to save her cheered. Aurora wasn't fully healed yet. She needed more time to get better. But she was still alive. She had made it. And the galaxy had seen the cost of winning and the strong bond between a salvager and his living ship. It had been 6 months since the battle for New Terra. Kalen stood on the observation deck of the New Meridian Research Station and watched Aurora fly through a series of test maneuvers through the clear hull. Now she was completely healed and stronger than ever. Her body had changed and adapted to the damage it had taken, making her even stronger. But she was happy too. Kalen could feel it through their bond, a sense of purpose and happiness that filled both of them. "Impressive as always," said Dr. Michael Winters, who joined Kalen at the viewport. "The performance metrics for Aurora are better than anything we've seen before. It seems like the trauma she went through made her stronger." Kalen said, "That's what living things do. They change. They get bigger. They get through it." He looked at Michael for a second. "How's the program going?" Michael brought up a holographic screen with 12 faces on it. "The Project Covenant initiative is going better than we thought it would. Once Sarah Bennett found the other 3 Covenant-class ships, we asked for pilots who might be interested. More than 50,000 people applied. 50,000 people wanted to connect with a living ship? More than wanted, needed to. Kalen, you showed that the bond between a pilot and a ship isn't just about skill. It's about more than that. Compatibility, connection, understanding." Michael pointed out 4 of the faces on the screen. "These 4 passed all of our tests. They have the neural flexibility, the emotional intelligence, and most importantly, the right way of thinking to possibly connect with a bioorganic vessel." Kalen looked at the faces. Emma Chin was a young woman who had lost her whole family in enemy attacks. David Park, a middle-aged man who used to be a transport pilot but was fired after an accident. Lisa Brooks was a soldier who had PTSD after fighting. And a quiet man named James Rivera, who had worked on salvage crews his whole life. Kalen said, "They're all broken in some way." Michael said, "Or put back together in a different way. Just like you did after Tycho 7. Maybe that's what we need. People who understand what it means to lose someone, to face their own death, and to be ignored or dismissed. Just like Aurora was. It made sense. People had left the bioorganic ships behind, forgotten about them, and called them failures. They would need pilots who could relate to them on that level and understand how they felt." "When do they get to their ships?" Kalen asked. "Next week. We got all 3 ships back and brought them here. The ships are in even worse shape than Aurora was when you found her. They will need faith, dedication, and patience." Michael gave Kalen a serious look. "We need you to be there. To help them get through the bonding process. You're the only one who really gets what it takes." Kalen nodded slowly. "I'll do what I can to help. But Michael, you need to know that I can teach them the technical parts. But what about the bond? They'll have to figure that out on their own. Like Aurora and I did." Kalen stood in a huge hangar the next week, where the 3 Covenant-class ships that had been found were parked in separate bays. There were 3 ships and each one was different. One was a little smaller than Aurora, another was bigger, and the third was longer and more streamlined. But they all had the same bioorganic patterns and the same chance of life. The 4 possible pilots stood nervously in front of him, looking at the ships that were not moving with a mix of fear and hope. Kalen said, "I know what you're thinking. These ships are like old, dead machines to you. Everyone thought the salvage was useless." He gave a small smile. "That's what I saw too. And I was totally wrong." He walked toward Aurora, who was resting in a nearby bay, and put his hand on her hull. The lights on her ship pulsed in greeting, and the 4 candidates gasped when they saw the ship respond to his touch. These ships are not machines. They are living things that have thoughts, feelings, and goals. They've been sleeping for decades, waiting for the right people to come along. You need them as much as they need you." Kalen looked back at the group. "But I won't lie, the process of bonding isn't easy. It asks you to let go of everything and connect your mind with something strange and new. It's scary. It's too much. And it will change you for good." 24-year-old Emma Chen was the youngest of the group. "Commander Ross, I felt empty after the enemy killed my family. It felt like a part of me died with them. When I heard about your relationship with Aurora and how you became more than just friends." She looked at the ships with desire. "I want that. I want to be whole again." David Park nodded his head. "I lost my job and my self-esteem after the accident. For 5 years I felt like I don't matter. They got rid of these ships in the same way they got rid of me. Maybe we can prove everyone wrong together." Lisa Brooks, who had been through a lot of trauma and war, said, "I know what it's like to go through trauma and come back different. Maybe I can help these ships heal if they have been through that too. And maybe they can help me." James Rivera, the quietest of the group, said, "I've worked with salvage my whole life. People only value what's new and shiny, so I've seen a lot of potential go to waste. Commander, I see worth in what everyone else threw away. Always have." Kalen felt a rush of hope. These 4 got it. They really knew what it meant to connect with these amazing ships. "Okay," he said. "Let me tell you what you can expect." Kalen worked with each candidate and their chosen ship over the next few months. It was hard and often frustrating to go through the process. The ships were in worse shape than Aurora had been, and their bioorganic systems barely worked after decades of being left alone. But slowly and against all odds, bonds started to form. Emma Chin made a connection with the smallest ship, which she called Hope. Emma and the ship's gentle nature were a good match, and they both found healing in their relationship. At first, David Park had trouble with the bigger boat he had chosen, but he eventually found that it fit him very well. He called his ship Redemption, which was a good name for both of them. Lisa Brooks and her sleek ship, which she named Phoenix, may have had the most difficult bonding process. Both of them had been through a lot of trauma, and their relationship was strong and sometimes painful. But it was also strong. When they finally worked together completely, they were very strong. James Rivera surprised everyone by getting in touch with his chosen ship faster than anyone thought possible. He called her Serenity, and their relationship was marked by a deep, quiet understanding that didn't need many words. 6 months after the program started, all 4 Covenant-class ships were up and running. Each one had a pilot who was as close to the ship as Kalen was to Aurora. At a formal ceremony, Admiral Torres, who is now fleet commander, spoke to the pilots and ships that were there. She said, "What started as one salvager's bet on a worthless ship has turned into something revolutionary. The Covenant initiative has shown that the future of defending the galaxy doesn't depend only on bigger weapons or stronger shields. It comes from the relationship between human consciousness and technology that can change. In the bond between the pilot and the ship, something bigger than either could be alone is made." Torres pointed to the 5 ships lined up in a row: Aurora, Hope, Redemption, Phoenix, and Serenity. These ships and their pilots are a sign of a new era. They've shown us that the things we think are worthless are often the most valuable. That real strength comes from working together, being flexible, and having the guts to connect with the unknown. She looked directly at Kalen. "Commander Ross, your vision and will have changed the course of history in the galaxy. With you in charge, the Covenant Squadron will be both a defensive force and a sign of what can happen when we think outside the box." Kalen could feel Aurora's pride through their connection as well as something else: a sense of family. All 5 ships could sense each other because their bioorganic systems were linked. They weren't alone anymore. They had been alone for decades, but now they had found others like them. Their pilots felt the same way. The enemy never came back in large numbers. Intelligence said that the losses they had suffered, especially the damage done to their energy systems by the Covenant Squadron, had been too great. They had gone back to their own territory, wherever that was, and there was no sign that they were going to attack again. For now, the galaxy was safe. But the effects of Aurora and the Covenant initiative went far beyond the military. The successful biointegration technology sparked a revolution in how humanity and its allies approached technology itself. Research centers all over the galaxy started using organic technology for medical purposes, making implants that could heal along with damaged tissue. Agricultural systems had bioresponsive parts that could change to fit the changing conditions on the planet. Architecture for space stations even started using living materials that could fix themselves and change to meet the needs of the people who lived there. Dr. Winters won the Chin Award, which is a very important award, for his work on understanding and documenting bioorganic integration. He was typically humble in his acceptance speech, saying, "I didn't find this technology, it was always there waiting." Others thought it was junk, but Commander Kalen Ross saw potential. People made fun of him, but he had faith. And because of his vision, we've entered a new era of innovation where technology and life work together rather than in opposition. He deserves the credit, as do the amazing ships like Aurora that showed us that our ideas about what was possible were way too narrow. Sarah Bennett, who had helped find the extra Covenant-class ships, turned her salvage business into a specialized company that looked for other lost experimental technologies. She worked closely with the Covenant initiative, and even though she and Kalen would never be close friends, they had a lot of respect for each other. "You taught me an important lesson, Kalen," she told him at the initiative's 1-year anniversary celebration. "Value isn't always clear. Some of the most important things are the ones that everyone else ignores." Marcus Chin, Kalen's loyal friend and partner in everything, was named Chief Operations Officer of the Covenant Initiative. He always laughed and said, "I just tried to keep Kalen from getting himself killed," when people asked him what he did during the revolution. "It was just a bonus that we saved the galaxy." 2 years after the battle for New Terra, Kalen stood on the bridge of Aurora, getting ready for a normal patrol flight with the rest of the Covenant Squadron. He could see the other 4 ships, Hope, Redemption, Phoenix, and Serenity, forming up through the window. Each one was different and special. "Are you ready, Aurora?" he asked, putting his hands on the interface points. The ship's answer came through their bond, which was a feeling of happiness and excitement. She loved flying, loved being in a relationship with him, and loved being a part of something big. The screen said, Biosystem integration, 100% complete. Partner ready to go. Partner. Not pilot, not commander, partner. That's how they were, and that's how they would always be. As Aurora gracefully rose from the dock and joined her squadron mates, Kaelin thought about the amazing journey that had brought them all here. From a salvager who was laughed at for taking a chance on trash to the leader of the galaxy's most revolutionary military unit. From a ship that was dormant and forgotten to one that was alive and whose sacrifice saved millions and changed the course of galactic civilization. Do you know what's funny? Kaelin said it out loud, knowing that Aurora could hear his thoughts through their connection. Everyone thought you were useless. They said I was stupid for buying you. And in a way they were right. By normal standards you had no value. You couldn't fly, fight, or do anything else a ship was supposed to do. That he had learned to recognize the pulsing lights of Aurora as amusement. But you weren't worthless. You were worth a lot. You just needed someone to notice it, to trust you, to give you a chance to show what you could be. He smiled. I guess we both needed that. I had given up on myself before I met you. I thought I had already lived my best days and would never do anything important again. But you gave me a reason to live. You gave me hope. Aurora's bond with him said a lot of complicated things. Thankfulness, love, and the feeling that their relationship had changed her in the same way. She had been sleeping for so long, all by herself in the dark. Kaelin had not only woken her systems, but also her spirit. He had made her life worth living again. What's your answer, Aurora? Kaelin asked as they stepped into the open space, where stars were all around them. Are you ready to show the galaxy what a few misfits can do? The engines of the ship flared up more, and Kaelin could feel that Aurora agreed with him completely. They sped up together with the other Covenant ships staying in perfect formation. 5 living ships and their partners moved through space as one. People talked about the Junkyard King and his useless junk for years. But more importantly, they had shown that looks and first impressions were not reliable ways to judge someone's worth. That the most valuable things were often the ones that most people missed. That partnership and connection could lead to something amazing. And that sometimes, what other people thought was junk was the most important thing in the whole universe. Aurora's legacy would live on for generations, not just as the ship that saved the galaxy, but also as a sign of hope, potential, and the strength of believing in what others can't see. The things that were worthless had become priceless. And the story of the salvaged heart would inspire many others to look deeper, to find value in things that have been forgotten, and to make connections that would change the world. 5 years after Aurora's first flight, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Kaelin Ross, who is now 37 and a fleet admiral, stood in the command center of the newly built Covenant Academy. This huge complex orbits the gas giant Titan and is where humanity built some of its first deep space colonies. He could see dozens of ships parked in the facility's bays through the huge viewports. Most of the ships were standard fleet ships, but there were also 15 Covenant-class ships. Each one was recovered, restored, and paired with a carefully chosen pilot. 15 ships that are alive. 15 partnerships that changed how wars were fought, how people explored, and how people interacted with technology. A young officer told him, Admiral Ross, the new cadets are here. Kaelin nodded and took a moment to reach out to Aurora through their connection. She was on her own dock on the other side of the station, but their bond was still strong even from that distance. He could feel her pride in what they had built together and how much she wanted him to succeed. He walked to the main auditorium of the academy, where 200 young candidates were waiting. They were men and women from many different worlds and species, all hoping to be chosen for the Covenant program. The competition had gotten very tough. Only people with very flexible brains, mature emotions, and the right attitude would be chosen to connect with the newly discovered bioorganic vessels. After Aurora's success, researchers found bits and pieces of information about other experimental programs from the early days of human expansion. There are not only Covenant-class explorers, but also other types of bio-integrated ships, like scouts, medical ships, and research ships. Everyone gave up when the technology turned out to be too complicated for the time. All of them are waiting to be found and brought back to life. Kaelin walked up to the podium and looked out at the people in front of him who were hopeful. He saw himself in a lot of them, their need for purpose, their need to prove themselves, and their need to be part of something bigger. 5 years ago, he started, his voice easily carrying through the auditorium, I was a failed salvager standing in a hangar, staring at a ship that everyone said was worthless. I was broke, in debt, and desperate. I'd lost everything that mattered to me, my crew, my reputation, my confidence. I bought that ship as a last-ditch effort and everyone laughed at me." He stopped for a moment to let the words sink in. By common sense they were right to laugh. Aurora couldn't fly. She had no power source. Her systems were off and not working. By all practical measures she was junk. But I saw something that others didn't see, not because I was smarter or more talented, but because I was so desperate that I looked past the obvious. Kalen brought up a holographic picture of Aurora that showed how she had changed from a broken-down ship to the beautiful ship she had become. What I found out changed everything. Aurora wasn't worthless, she was priceless. But you couldn't unlock her value in the usual ways. She needed someone who was willing to connect with her, understand her, and be her partner instead of just her operator. And by bonding with her, I became more than I could have been alone. He looked at each part of the audience one by one. You're here because you want that bond. You want to experience what I've described, the incredible partnership between pilot and living ship. But I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't about glory or becoming a hero. The bond with a bioorganic vessel will change you fundamentally. It will show you parts of yourself you didn't know existed. It will demand everything from you, your trust, your vulnerability, your willingness to open your consciousness to something utterly alien. A young woman in the front row put her hand up. "Admiral Ross, how do you know if you and a ship are a good fit? What if you don't?" Kalen smiled softly. "Failure is part of the process. When I first connected with Aurora, I failed dozens of times. The connection would form and then break. I'd get overwhelmed, scared, or frustrated. But each failure taught me something about myself and about her. The bond that worked only came after I stopped trying to control the process and learned to just be with her." There was a man in his 40s who was standing. "Sir, I'm not young. Most of the people here are in their 20s. Am I too old for this program?" "Age doesn't matter," Kalen said. "Your heart and mind are what matter." David Park, one of our first Covenant pilots, was 46 when he joined Redemption. He didn't bring youthful energy. He brought maturity, patience, and a deep understanding of what it means to start over. That's what his ship needed. A tall young man with scars on his face asked, "What about physical limitations? I lost my left arm in the colony raids. Does that mean I can't do it?" "No," Kalen said with certainty. "The neural interface doesn't depend on physical wholeness. In fact, several of our most successful pilots have physical disabilities. The bioorganic ships don't judge you by your body's capabilities but by your consciousness, your spirit, your willingness to connect." He paused. "Some of our best pilots have been through loss or trauma. They know what it means to heal, adapt, and become something new. The ships know this too." Kalen met with the program selection committee in private after the assembly. Dr. Michael Winters led the group. He was now gray-haired but still full of energy and still loved bioorganic technology. Michael said, "We've cut the number of candidates down to 50. But Kalen, we have a problem. This year we've only found 3 new ships. Even if all 3 bondings go well, we'll have to turn down 47 qualified candidates." "Then we find more ships," Kalen said simply. "It's not that easy. We've looked through every database and followed every lead. The experimental programs from that time were very secret, and most records were destroyed on purpose." Sarah Bennett, who was now the Academy's chief procurement officer, spoke up. "I might have a lead. I've been following strange energy patterns in the outer reaches, which are areas that are even farther away than the frontier colonies. Deep space explorers tell stories of ghost ships and derelicts that show up on sensors and then disappear. Most people think they're just sensor glitches or space legends." "But you don't," Kalen said. Sarah shook her head. "The signatures match bioorganic materials in dormant states. I think there might be vessels out there that were never officially recorded. Prototype ships that were tested in secret and then abandoned when the program shut down." Admiral Torres said, "That would be dangerous territory," as he joined the meeting via hologram. "The outer reaches are unstable, stars are collapsing, planets are going rogue, and there are strange gravitational forces. That's why we haven't settled there yet. That makes it the perfect place to test out new technology and then get rid of it," Kalen said. He looked out the window at Aurora and felt her presence. "We should look into this. If there are more ships out there and more minds waiting to be awakened, it's our duty to find them." Michael looked worried. "Kalen, you're talking about a search mission that could last for years in some of the most dangerous parts of space in the galaxy. The Academy needs you here. The Academy has great teachers. You don't need me for day-to-day operations." Kalen felt a familiar excitement building, the same feeling he'd had 5 years ago when he first decided to investigate Aurora. "Michael, this is what I do. I see value in things that other people don't. I find potential where others see nothing. If there are more ships out there lost and alone, I'm going to find them. He could tell that Aurora was excited about what he was saying through their connection. She had been working in SAFE for 5 years. She was ready for another adventure. Ready to help her pilot find more ships like her. I'll put together a group, Sarah said. Salvagers with experience who know what we're looking for. I'm coming too, Marcus Chin said as he walked into the room. He had been listening from the door. Kalen, you're not going on a multi-year deep space trip without me. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. Kalen smiled at his oldest friend. Like you've ever been able to do that. That's true, but I keep trying. Aurora left the Covenant Academy 3 months later and led a small fleet of explorers into the outer reaches. Along with Kalen and Marcus, the team also included Sarah Bennett and her salvage crew, Dr. Winters and a scientific team, and 3 of the newer Covenant pilots with their ships, Hope, Phoenix, and Discovery, which had just been bonded. The trip would last 18 months and cover a lot of space that had never been explored before. It would be dangerous, hard, and maybe even pointless. Kalen felt a deep sense of rightness as Aurora jumped into hyperspace. He was meant to do this. Not sitting in an office running programs and going to ceremonies, but being out here in the dark looking for lost treasures and finding value in what other people missed. For the first 6 months, they only found false leads and sensor ghosts. The outer reaches were just as dangerous as they said they would be. They lost 2 escort ships to gravitational anomalies and had to give up 3 promising search grids when collapsing stars made the areas too dangerous. Kalen, on the other hand, wouldn't give up. Aurora felt his determination and matched it with her own. The bioorganic vessels could pick up energy signatures that regular sensors couldn't, and they slowly and carefully narrowed their search area. In the 7th month, Aurora noticed something strange. A weak bioorganic signature in the debris field of an old battle. They found the broken pieces of a Covenant-class ship that were so badly damaged that even her own repair systems had stopped working. She had been killed in a fight that no one remembered decades ago. Kalen felt very sad as they looked at the wreckage. This ship was like Aurora in that it was alive, aware, and able to do amazing things. But she had died alone and forgotten in this dark part of space. Her pilot had probably died in the battle that destroyed her. We should put a marker here, he said softly. Write down her coordinates so that she won't be forgotten again. She deserves that much. Something unexpected happened as they were getting ready to leave the debris field. Aurora's systems picked up another faint signal, but this one wasn't from the destroyed ship. It was from somewhere deeper in the debris field. Kalen said, "There's something else here," following Aurora's gut feeling. Something that is alive. 3 hours later, they found it. A small pod, no bigger than a shuttle, with the same bioorganic patterns on its hull as the Covenant-class ships. It had been thrown out of the ship that was about to sink, along with something valuable. They carefully opened the pod and found dozens of what looked like seed pods. Each one had what Dr. Winters called bioorganic core material inside. The ship's last act was to throw out these seeds, which meant that even though she died, others like her might live in the future. "Wow, this is amazing," Winters said. "We could grow completely new bioorganic vessels if we can successfully culture these seeds. Not recover old ones but make new ones. It would take years, maybe decades, but it means that the bioorganic ships don't have to be limited to what we can find from the past," Kalen said. "They can have a future, a real future with new generations." They carefully put the seed pods into stasis chambers and kept looking with new hope. In the next year they found 11 more Covenant-class ships, each in a different state of preservation. 5 were too broken to fix, and their bioorganic systems had been dead for a long time. But 6 were asleep, just like Aurora had been, hurt and forgotten but still alive and able to wake up. Every new thing they found was a win. Every recovery was a rescue. Kalen went to each dormant ship in person and put his hand on their hulls to feel the faint spark of life still there. He told each one, "We're here. We're going to take you home, find you partners, and give you a reason to live again. You're not worthless. You never were." 18 months after leaving, the expedition returned to the Covenant Academy with their cargo holds full of dormant ships and valuable seed pods. The welcome they got was joyful. The 6 recovered ships were a huge step forward for the program, and the seed pods gave them hope for an even better future. Kalen brought back more than just physical things, he also brought back knowledge. They had mapped out huge areas of the outer reaches, found dozens of possible places to search in the future, and shown that there were more bioorganic vessels than anyone had thought. "This is just the beginning," Kalen told everyone at the celebration ceremony for the Academy staff and students. There are more ships out there, more minds that need to be awakened, and more partnerships that need to be made. We're going to find them all. 10 years after Kalen Ross bought a worthless, broken-down ship in a dusty hangar, the galaxy was very different. There were now more than 60 bonded pairs of ship pilots in the Covenant program. The bioorganic seed pods that Kalen's expedition found had been successfully grown, and the first completely new bioorganic vessel, grown instead of found, was almost finished. She wasn't ready for a pilot for another 5 years, but her existence showed that the technology could be used for more than just fixing things that had already happened. The enemy that had once threatened to wipe out all of civilization in the galaxy never came back. Intelligence reports said they had retreated to their own land because they couldn't get past the adaptive technology. For the first time in history, the galaxy was at peace and doing well. Bioorganic technology had moved beyond the military and into every part of life. Buildings that changed to meet the needs of the people who lived in them. Medical implants that helped damaged tissue heal. Agricultural systems that could turn empty worlds into gardens. Transportation networks that changed to meet real-time needs. Aurora's legacy went beyond just winning wars. She had started a revolution in how intelligent species interacted with technology, not as tools to be used but as partners to work with. Kalen Ross, who is now 42 and only works part-time, stood on the bridge of Aurora and looked out at the stars. His hair was completely gray now, and the lines on his face showed how much he had changed in the last 10 years as had the galaxy. But his eyes still had that same fire of determination that had made him bet everything on a ship that everyone said was worthless. "Do you ever think about it, Aurora?" he asked, speaking out loud like he often did even though they could talk to each other through their neural link. "Everyone thought I was crazy that day in the hangar when I first saw you. Maybe I was. Maybe we both were." Through their connection, Aurora was able to express a wide range of emotions. Happiness at the memory, pride in what they had done, satisfaction with how things had turned out, and deep, profound love for her partner. "I was so lost back then," Kalen went on. "After Tycho 7, when I lost my crew, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never do anything important again. I was just going through the motions, waiting for the end." He put his hand on the pilot's chair and felt the warmth of Aurora's living systems. "Then I found you. Or maybe you found me. Either way, we saved each other." The lights on the ship pulsed softly, and Kalen knew that Aurora agreed. She had been asleep for decades, alone and forgotten, thinking that she would never fulfill her purpose. Then this broken person had seen something good in her when no one else did. Had faith in her. Had given her life a new purpose. They had saved one another. And by doing that, they had saved the galaxy. Kalen smiled and said, "You know what the best part is? We inspired so many others. Every pilot who connects with a bioorganic vessel and every person who sees potential in something that was thought to be worthless. That's because of us. We showed it was possible." There was a message on Aurora's screen. It was from Emma Chin, one of the most experienced Covenant pilots, who was leading a search party to find new areas. "Admiral Ross, Hope and I found something. Sending coordinates. It looks like a whole fleet of ships that aren't moving. There might be 20 or more. Can we check it out?" Kalen felt a rush of excitement. More boats. More awareness that needs to be awakened. There are more stories to write. He sent back, "Permission granted. And Emma, be patient with them. They've been alone for a long time. They'll need someone who believes in them, even when they don't believe in themselves." "Got it, sir." "Just like you did for Aurora." Kalen looked around Aurora's bridge as the transmission ended. People had called the ship junk, salvage, and a waste of money. The ship that saved millions of lives and started a revolution that changed the way people lived in the galaxy. He asked, "What do you say, girl? Want to help Emma wake up those sleeping ships and find them partners? We're pros at this now." Aurora's engines lit up with excitement, and the familiar blue-white glow lit up the dark around them. She wanted to help, of course. That's what they did. They found value in the things that had been forgotten, woke up the things that had been dormant, and showed that worth couldn't be measured by how things looked. As Aurora pulled away from the dock and headed for Emma's coordinates, Kalen felt the same sense of purpose and joy he had felt 10 years ago when they first flew together. Some bonds once made never break. Some partnerships lasted forever after they were made. The Junkyard King and his useless junk were going back into the dark, where they would look for more miracles. Because that's what they had always done. And that's what they would always do. People would tell the story of Kalen Ross and Aurora for generations. It wouldn't be a story about military heroism or technological success, but about faith, partnership, and the power of seeing value where others don't. It was a story about a man who was broken and a ship that had been forgotten. They met at their lowest points and became something amazing together. It was a story that showed that value couldn't be measured, only seen. And it was a story that would encourage many others to look beyond the surface, to find the extraordinary in the ordinary, and to remember that sometimes the most important things are the ones that everyone else ignores. Things that were worthless had become priceless. The things that were saved had become holy. And the world would never be the same again.